is Locked On MLB. We're going to be talking about that team in the National League East who's looking at all the other teams in the National League East saying, when's it our turn to be in the World Series? Are we talking Mets? No. We're going across the pond, and we're going fishing for Marlins. New manager, new lease on life. Same podcast host of Locked On Marlins is Peter Pratt. This is going to be a Locked On MLB in the afternoon. We're going big sea fishing. Let's reel them in.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That's not a foghorn. That's the sound that I'm in my school. Hey, there's another fish pun I could do. We got a school of fish going on here. Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Check out my lower third there. You can call me Sully. Today's episode, which is a live stream, so if you're in the chat, I see a couple of eyeballs have already popped in there. This is on the 10th day of November. We're in mid-November, folks, 2022. And we're going to be talking with Peter Pratt of Locked On Marlins about the team. And we're going to talk about the outlook for this upcoming season and the new manager, the new lease on life. All these things are happening as Peter Pratt is across the pond to talk about this. Hey, follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. Where's that lower third again? You can follow me at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. So the National League East seems to be the place to be if you want to be in the World Series for a team that goes 162 games. Make sure you don't have the best record in the league. Make sure your win-loss record is in the high 80s, low 90s, and then you get to go to the World Series. Maybe that's what the Marlins should be aiming for. But the host of Locked On Marlins is not in Miami, but is in Leeds, or as I like to call it, the Miami of the United Kingdom. And he is way off in England. I'm here, as you can tell, in the luxurious Locked On MLB studios, as part of the Pasadena Unified School District, an empty classroom. We had to coordinate our times because the time difference is bananas. So let's not waste any more of time. Let's waste just a little more time. Okay, that's the perfect amount of time to waste. Ladies and gentlemen, from overseas, our friend Peter Pratt. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Sully. What an intro. What an intro.
Well, I don't get you on the phone that much because of the weird... we have to coordinate it. It becomes an international incident.
It's tough, no doubt. I have no idea how many hours difference there is. I think there's 8, but it's 8 p.m. UK time.
Yeah, so it's about noon here in Pasadena.
It's tough.
So,
but listen, we come together. We want to talk some Marlins, right? So
we'll come together
it has to be done.
Right now over me. Boy, we could get in trouble with some of the copyright stuff there. So let's just go right back to it. You and I spoke at the beginning of the season. And I had, how do I say this? I had some tempered optimism for Miami going into the 2022 season. You and I were on the same page. Though, yes, they made the playoffs in the abbreviated season for the COVID year. They had a bad 2021, but you and I both were the mindset of, hey, they could pitch. If they raise their batting average to mediocre, they could start winning some games. To be fair, they won more in 2022 than they did in 2021. In 2021, they won 67 games. This year, they won 69 games. Nice.
Progress.
Progress, exactly. But I think they were looking for more than, while it's games plural, more, they wanted it to be, I don't know, maybe the double digits more. Tell me a little bit your thoughts, because the Marlins had one gigantic highlight, wonderful highlight for this last year. The rest of the season things just didn't line up.
It was a weird year, wasn't it? I mean, when we spoke back in April, I think it was, whatever tempered expectations you had for the Marlins, add on 20 games worth of expectations that I had. Like, I was all in on the Fish this year, and I knew the pitching was good. And, we'd made what I felt like really nice offseason moves with the trades and a couple of free agents. I was thinking, okay, to your point, if the offense is middle of the road here and the Marlins pitch well and Sandy Alcantara is healthy and Pablo Lopez are healthy, this team's going to be in the mix. Problem was, the whole of the offense, apart from Jazz Chisholm Jr., effectively took 4 steps backwards at least.
Yeah.
It was historically bad, to be honest, Sully. And as a fan, I host a pod. First and foremost, I'm a fan of the team.
Yeah.
And I tell you, it was tough to watch. Tough to watch. Other than every 5th day when Sandy was out there. And Sandy is a different beast. There is no one like Sandy Alcantara right now in the game. He is just doing things no one else is allowed to do. But
I love how you put that, because it's true. And for those of you who don't know what Peter's talking about, Sandy, I think the reason we don't have these big, huge inning-eating starting pitchers anymore is not because the players are not capable of it. It's not because they're weaker. It's not because Bob Gibson and Don Drysdale and Juan Marichal were all stronger. It's because they're not allowed to. The teams are not letting pitchers become innings eaters. They're not allowing a pitcher to face a lineup a third way through. And I'm going to do a whole podcast on that, because I think some of it is because of sabermetrics and everything. I think most of it is economics. I think most of it is, oh my God, it's going to cost us $30 million a year to get a pitcher like Max Scherzer. Well, let's not make pitchers like Max Scherzer anymore. Let's get pitchers to go 6 innings. And that's expected. We saw that in the World Series. I mean, what's his doodle? Wheeler was pitching a great game 6 of the World Series. 2 runners got on, and everyone said, well, obviously they're going to take him out.
70
of course.
pitches. 70 pitches.
70. He didn't even get 80 pitches into the damn game. And in comes the parade of relievers, and boom, next thing you know, they're dancing in Houston. There are pitchers who have the capability of being big honking innings eaters, and one of the only one, as you said, who's allowed to is Sandy Alcantara, who pitched 228 2/3 innings, completed 6 games, but beyond that, he was always going into the 7th or 8th inning, partly because I think I'd rather have this dude on the mound than anyone else. But he also was, he hit every single mark that you would want from a traditional innings eater. And I ate up every game. I'm sure you loved it. It was the highlight of your week. But for me, just as a casual Marlins observer, I cannot call myself a casual baseball fan because I'm talking about the Marlins on November 10th. But they allow him to do that, and it kind of is frustrating because you're going like, wonder who else could do this.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great point. The Wheeler point you made, I talked about it on my show. Just the fact that, Wheeler pulled after 70 pitches in that big game. It's, if they lose that game, they're done. So to pull your ace in that spot because there was 2 runners on, I mean, come on, Sandy's earned that respect. The thing I did speak about the pod, though, and you mentioned it, new management in, right? Skip Schumaker in. I'm very intrigued to see what that means for Sandy Alcantara and the leash that he's given now. Will that change next year? Was that Donnie's call? Is that a Marlins thing? I don't know the answer to that, and we won't know until we get into the season. But all of a sudden, are they going to put some shackles onto Sandy next year? I don't know. I actually have no idea. I'm very intrigued to see what they do.
I think some people play it safe. I think some people get obsessed with that sense of security that you have, knowing that they're not going to go, you're not going to blow the arm out. But it's also like it's valuables, a pitcher like him. And while you do want to protect him, you also want to be able to take advantage of having him. But you also don't want to lose him. By the way, if you want to protect your valuables and are trying to be safe, can you think of any service that we should be using to protect our values and be safe, just off the top of your head?
Boy, oh boy, Sully, you've absolutely teed me up beautifully. I know this great organization, this great business called SimpliSafe. If you've thought about securing your home with home security, but have been putting it off, do not. You'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On listeners can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. You heard that right, guys. 50% off.
No,
The
that
biggest
can't
offer.
be true. That cannot be true.
Unbelievable. Shocking scenes, 50% off. Biggest offer of the year. You don't want to miss it. Tons of reasons, but for me, SimpliSafe, the whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window and door, HD security cameras, inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real. None of these, my cat's walking around, my dog's walking around, they'll only detect it when the threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 monitoring services cost less than $1 a day. $1, less than $1, and it's less.
Well,
than
you
half
understand what that means? What is it? The currency exchange. That's
I mean, that's a good point. It's almost 1-to-1 these days. That's the problem as well. Where's the pound gone?
I didn't mean to rub that one in.
I know. I mean, we've lost our queen. We've had 5 prime ministers, and now we've got no currency. What is going on here in the UK? Anyway, nevertheless, don't worry, guys.
What you have left, protect with SimpliSafe.
You can protect with SimpliSafe. Exactly. What is left of our takeaway? Protect it. And don't miss the chance to save early on it. Head over to simplisafe.com/lockdownmlb. There is no safe like SimpliSafe. Stunning.
I know. Great read. Well, welcome to Locked On Currency with Peter Pratt. By the way, we do have some people in the who are in the chat and everything. Friend of the podcast, guest, and podcaster himself, rabid Met fan Jeff Cohen is from Long Island City, so he's basically the way station between Pasadena and Leeds right now. But he made a point I want to bring on to right now, which is Pablo Lopez is pretty good too, and that's right. And in fact, when you and I were talking, get out of here. When you and I were talking just at the beginning of the season, and I was seeing nothing but tulips and daffodils regarding the 2022 Miami Marlins, if you had come up to us and said Sandy Alcantara will probably be the unanimous Cy Young can I mean, like, what? Julio Urias, get out of here. If you had told me that Alcantara was going to be the heads and shoulders Cy Young winner, Pablo Lopez was going to have a very good season, good ERA, a lot of starts, that Luzardo was going to have a 3.32 ERA, that Braxton Garrett would have a decent ERA, that Edward Cabrera in his short stint would have a decent ERA. Like, if you had told me that you would be able to rattle off 5 pretty good pitchers, including the inevitable Cy Young Award winner, and Lopez not missing a start and getting 180 innings himself, you would think, okay, let's go.
This is the problem, Sully, right? You look at it and go, the pitchers, the rotation did what they were expected to do. More than so with Sandy. I mean, like you said, he's the unanimous side, no doubt about it. You've got Jazz Chisholm that was voted in as a starter, as an all-star as well. Garrett Cooper also was an all-star. So you've got 3 all-stars for the Marlins, including a Cy Young, and Miggy Rowe was a Gold Glove finalist at shortstop. Somehow the Marlins found a way to win 69 games with all of those positives. That just speaks to how bad the wheels came off, particularly offensively. Obviously, the bullpen was a mess too, particularly the leverage spot. But
it was the lineup, because I mean, this is a stat I'm going to throw at you. If you take, again, I'm not going to treat this stat like it's the end all be all, but if you take OPS plus and take 100 as being the baseline, that 100 OPS plus is an average, like the average offensive player. Okay. Anything above 100, you're above average, anything below. They had 2 batters with OPS pluses over 100, Jazz Chisholm and Cooper was barely over it. Now, Jazz Chisholm Jr., not the old man, he has nothing to do with it. Jazz Chisholm Jr. No. I totally stole that from Jimmy Pardo. If Jimmy Pardo wants to sue me, please go ahead. Jazz Chisholm Jr. had a very good season. There's no getting around. But again, a very good season is 14 home runs, an OPS of 860. There you go. There's your offensive MVP of the team. Again, that's a nice season.
How many games?
And he played. That's right, 60 games. Holy Toledo. That's right. That's right. He missed a chunk of the season. They brought in Soler fresh off of the World Series MVP. He bombed. They have Avisail Garcia. He bombed. And there's a bunch of players who were thinking like, hey, if this person have a decent year, that person have a decent year. They all ate it.
That's the problem, right? Miguel Rojas was on with Chris Rose on the Rose rotation this week. The episode came out. Miggy ran through basically the whole of the offense. He said, Jorge Soler, down year. Avisail Garcia, down year. Cooper, down year. Wendell, down year. The whole of the lineup was a down year, and that's basically the summary of the offense. All of the offense stepped back. It's absolutely phenomenal, to be honest with you, that they managed to be that bad. I don't know how they managed it. I don't know.
That's the thing that will absolutely floor me about this team. And again, I'm being a broken record here, but they did the hard part. The hard part is developing a pitching staff.
Yeah.
And bullpen was a bit of a letdown, but there are always good relievers who are available at the trade deadline. And maybe you could, have one of your starters come out of the pen for a little bit. I don't know. You could mix and match a little bit. Mm-hmm. Maybe the answer is to acquire another starter and maybe move, Garrett or Luzardo to the pen. I don't know the answer. This is why Kim Eng is getting her shot. But they need a difference making bat in the middle of it. And our frequent listener and commenter, MP, just wrote in, Miami should sign Josh Bell. He'd be a great fit.
Completely agree.
I'm not being pie in the sky saying they should get Aaron Judge, okay? But it's funny. Both participants of the 1997 World Series, I have eerily similar complaints to. The Guardians much more egregious, but the Marlins payroll is only slightly higher than that of the Locked On Podcast Network. And you and I, we're making what, 30, 40 million a year?
I've got a currency exchange
40 million lira a year is what we're making. And yes, I'm going to try to make as many currency jokes as I possibly can. Lira, they're using the euro in Italy, so that joke doesn't really work anymore. But it made me laugh and made you laugh. If you raise the Marlins payroll to mediocrity, just again, like we said, the 100 is the middle of OPS plus. If they could have a 100 OPS plus payroll with this pitching staff, adding 3 decent bats, just legitimate major league hitters, hell, 100 OPS plus hitters, then chances are you're going to pick up a couple of those 3-2 losses are going to turn into 4-3 wins. I don't understand. You're the choir and I'm preaching, but at some point, all these owners who are sitting on gigantic Scrooge McDuck piles of money eventually should say, hey, what if we invest a little bit in our team? There's no reason when you have a Cy Young winner and a good pitching staff, just any bat, they should sign an okay free agent at every position and roll the freaking dice at this point.
Let's go, Sully. You've got me absolutely pumped going. But you're completely right. You got to spend the dough. Let me just give you a bit of insight in terms of what we're hearing, though. They're not going to do that this offseason. They're not going to do that. Their mindset is.
You blew me back to the back of my chair.
I know. I'm completely with you. Listen, spend the dough, get some bats in. Don't have to send away prospects. Keep your prospects. Pay some dough and get in some bats. You can keep developing your prospects. However, the Marlins are saying, no, we've been snake bitten because we gave money to Soler and Javi Garcia and it bombed. We're not going to do that. So what we're going to do, we're going to take Pablo Lopez, that was good, and we're going to flip him for a bat. Problem is, rotation's then worse. Next thing is bad rotation, average offense. What's going to happen to the Marlins? 69 wins. You know what's going to happen.
And that's not nice. That is not a nice win total.
No.
Let's think about something we've learned this year, shall we? We've learned that paying for stars works. Look at Miami can whine. The Marlins, not you, but the Marlins organization can whine about your non-destination city. Did I cut out there?
Only for a second. Go on. Keep going.
Okay, for a second. Okay. I'll just keep going. This is live. Yeah, Miami is an obscure non-destination city. In every other sport, it's a big market that players are clamoring to play for. But somehow, when it's baseball, it might as well be Lincoln, Nebraska. For Peter Pratt, that's a tiny town in the middle of the Midwest, which is usually hit by tornadoes. Okay. It's Slough.
That is a stunner. That should be the episode title. It's Slough.
It's Slough.
Yeah.
That one was for you and all the Marlins listeners and all the people who watch the British Office, which is my main point of reference was Slough, which is why Scranton was such the perfect city to set the American. They didn't set it in Philadelphia or there are a lot of these small mill towns that fell apart the minute the mill closed. I digress. This is not Locked On Slough. Look at what again, I'm going to talk a little American geography, so I may lose Peter here. But San Diego, to the north is Los Angeles and Anaheim. Let's not forget Anaheim is a very popular team. And then the Dodgers are unbelievably popular. To the east, you have desert all the way to Las Vegas. To the west, you have the ocean. And to the south, you have Mexico. Baseball is very popular in Mexico. And the main team in Mexico are the Dodgers. So you can't be boxed into, and as cities go, San Diego, as major league cities go, San Diego is pretty small. Somehow, they turned over enough seat cushions and clipped enough coupons to sign Manny Machado, to trade for Juan Soto, to make a couple of big moves. And when not all of them worked, like Eric Hosmer, they didn't say, oh, no, well, this didn't work, ergo we should never do it again. They didn't go into that pile. And look what happened. They got to within 3 wins of the World Series. Philadelphia became as irrelevant to franchise as you could be for a decade. Couldn't even crack 500 after Ryan Howard fell in a heap at the end of the 2011 playoffs for them. They went out and they signed the players. Signing stars works, especially when you have generational talents like Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, and Manny Machado floating out there. And also, guess what also works? You had the NLCS this year. What did the Padres and the Philadelphia Phillies have in common besides going for it with big stars? What else do they have in common, Peter?
I want to say wild fan bases, but that's probably not the answer. What you're looking for?
They were sub 90 win teams.
Yeah, low wins. They were both wild cards. So
they went for the wild card. The Phillies got to within 2 wins of winning the World Series, and they were 1 game ahead of the Brewers, who were playing golf in an expanded postseason. In other words, you've got an expanded postseason. You have those dangling fruits of the 5th and 6th wild card spot that didn't exist before. Go run for that. Because the worst case scenario is you get swept out like Tampa Bay. Best case scenario is you're at Game 6 of the World Series, like the Philadelphia Phillies. And so that's almost like you saying, okay, how do we get there? Well, I don't know. We already have the pitching. So if we just raise our payroll a little bit and go for the big stars, I mean, MP immediately said, sign Josh Bell. Yeah, go for these acquisitions, because the bar of what you need to possibly win World Series title number 3, to pass the Mets, to pass the Phillies in their history, is to contend and snag one of those 5th or 6th slots. And it's sitting right there. Don't trade away Pablo Lopez. You build upon Pablo Lopez.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Let me ask you a question, though, just thinking about this. And you're completely right. I've talked about San Diego in particular back at the deadline because I was saying, listen, San Diego's a small market. Miami is a sports
huge market.
It's a huge market.
Yes.
How is it that the Padres are doing this and the Marlins are tackling it that way? And that comes down to the question I was going to ask you is, are the Rays and their success, is that hindering clubs like the Marlins where they're looking to the Rays and going, oh, actually, we can do it on this budget. We can do it on this shoestring, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of like diluting the fact, to your point, you need superstars. These clubs that are winning, that are actually winning. And listen, the Rays never actually won anything in the end. Like the analytics and the way they approached it, it never actually led to a World Series. But I wonder if that is hindering the Marlins and some of the other clubs, or they're using that as an excuse. Point to the Rays. Hey, the Rays do it this way. We can do the same.
I think it's a combination of things. I think, look at all teams use analytics. The Astros are a major analytics team. I don't look at analytics as a sort of a boogeyman. But what I do think is that the Rays model of being able to put a team in the postseason while doing it on a shoestring, is there because it's helpful for the ownership to not spend piles and piles of money. And that way they can point to, hey, we're doing, there's a lot of water that is carried by the fan bases who always frame good contract, bad contract based upon how it helps an ownership, never based upon how it helps the players. And sometimes not even based upon how it helps the team overall. And so I think that could be a crutch. Like, well, we're going to do it. Look, the Rays showed us how to do it. You don't have to spend piles of money. Okay, but you can also do it by spending piles of money. And I don't know, maybe getting your fan base excited. I know that's not something we're supposed to think about, but maybe having players that the fans can get attached to and wear their jerseys to and get super excited when they go to the ballpark instead of having every day. There are some days there are pitchers and players on the Rays roster who are on the other team before the game is over, that there's so much turnover.
It is true.
And, but I think that's a lot of it is propaganda to sort of how do we make how do we carry the water for the owners and say, oh, it's really smarter to try to win with a lower payroll because that means, of course, more profits. The owners of the owners of the Tampa Bay Rays are super wealthy. So are the owners of the Oakland A's. But guess what? They get to keep more green and gold by not paying out green and gold to people wearing green and gold.
Yep.
I'm trying to tie that together. I'm not sure if that worked or not. But there's also like you see a film like Moneyball, which I love the movie Moneyball, but I also look at it as it's a work of fiction. Like, oh, they won because they got a bunch of players who were discarded from other teams, and we cobbled them together to win a division title. You won that division title because you had 3 Cy Young contenders and the MVP in Miguel Tejada, who has one more line in the film than I do. The guy who plays Miguel Tejada has one line in the film. And he's mentioned like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern in Hamlet. He's freaking Hamlet. They won that because they had Mulder, Zito, and Hudson in their freaking rotation. 60% of their starts were Cy Young contenders. It wasn't because freaking Chris Pratt from Guardians of the Galaxy was taking walks. And, oh, by the way, what other team is lining up good starting pitchers that you could build upon? Let me think. I think it's in Florida, but on the other side of Florida. Oh, yeah, the Marlins. Sign players. Yes, I understand. The Marlins may feel a little gun shy with a disaster that happened in 2012, but do you know what? That's because it's not always going to work. But do you know what they should be making a movie about? Dave Dombrowski, who everywhere he goes, he's the Johnny Appleseed of penance. wins a championship in Miami, turns the Tigers around, gets them to within one bad bullpen of winning the World Series, wins a World Series with the Red Sox, takes over the Phillies. Guess who's in the World Series this year?
Yeah.
And guess what brilliant technique he used in each stop? I'm going to sign big players. I'm going to trade my prospects and build up. I'm going to trade my prospects and bring in Miguel Cabrera. I'm going to bring in Chris Sale. I'm going to bring in Kevin Brown. I'm going to bring in, all the players he's bringing in when he was in Philadelphia. Because that works. This has been my TED Talk.
Yeah, there you go. Start clapping, everyone.
Just drives me crazy. It drives me crazy.
I'm with you. The MO's there. I like, Dombrowski, clearly the MO's there. And, it does. Sometimes we overthink it, right? Sometimes you just say, do you know what? Let's pay for a superstar, lock him in, and let's go. And let's build around them. Like, it makes sense.
Before the 2019 season, you had two legit MVPs in their mid-20s were available for free agency, and they were not signed until spring training began. Bryce Harper and Manny Machado. And there were people saying, boy, what dumb contracts. By the way, now look at where the Phillies are and where the Padres are since then. Phillies, of course, are the defending National League champions. The Padres, after a decade of irrelevance, are now considered a top contender. And both teams did the same thing. They acquired quality talent when it was available. The Padres gave up a ton of prospects to Washington to get Juan Soto. Do you know why? Because he's Juan freaking Soto. And he was also pretty much the same age as the prospects that they forked over to Washington.
Yeah.
Great
deal. Great deal for the Padres, that one. When we look back, it'll
and maybe, just maybe, if you spend some money, you can convince some people that being a millionaire in Miami is not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like being a millionaire in Leeds.
Yeah.
Except you're in Miami.
There's some weather differences, I could confirm.
A few. Wait, which city did Scarface take place in? Oh, that was Miami. I couldn't remember if he was in Leeds. First you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the mansion in Leeds. I think that was the original line.
I think it was
in Scarface.
Then they flexed the location, I think.
That's right.
Budget constraints. Leeds is expensive.
And Robert Loggia's character's last name was Lopez. It's like Pablo Lopez.
Pablo.
Who should remain. I was thinking about this the other day. One of my favorite players of the last 10, 15 years was the late Jose Fernandez. I just, every time he pitched for the Marlins, I paid attention because, like Alcantara, he pitched deep into games. He pitched complete games and everything. But he also, my favorite player of all time is Pedro Martinez. And every time Pedro pitched, it was like a carnival. It was it was the greatest sensation. And I got a similar vibe from Jose Fernandez. And I absolutely miss Jose Fernandez as a player. And I was just thinking the other day about imagine if Alcantara and Fernandez and Lopez. And I said, who are you kidding? Fernandez would be on the Cardinals. He'd be on the Dodgers.
Gone by now,
he'd be so gone by now.
He would.
He would be so gone by now. And that's a shame because you look at Alcantara. Alcantara he's not as young as people think he is. He's in his 30s, and he's been paid. This is going to be, he came over from the Cardinals, but this is going to be his 6th year with Miami. And he's, how old is he? 30? No, he's 26, right? How old is
I think he's just turned 27, Sandy.
Okay, yeah. I for some reason I thought he was older than he was, but no, you're right. He was.
I think he's 27, maybe 26.
Okay, but either way, and by the way, he was part of the Marcelo Zuna trade.
Yeah.
So he could have been a Cardinal, along with the Cardinals. The Cardinals will trade away prospects, but then again, the Cardinals also always stay relevant. You may notice when they get the Paul Goldschmidts and Nolan Arenados of the world, it's because they're always willing to go for it.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
would love to see them go for it. Well, the bell tells me it's the end of my free period. So Peter Pratt. By the way, Peter Pratt is the host of Locked On Marlins. Thanks for making Locked On MLB your first listen. Your second listen should be Locked On Marlins, because Peter Pratt is there doing the Lord's work, talk about a 69-win team. In terms of your third listen of the day, what should people's third listen of the day be?
Well, like you said, first is this show, second is Locked On Marlins. Then after that, you've got Locked On Sports Today podcast, biggest sports stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and of course, the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your pods.
All right. Well, hey, look, I got to run. I got a class to teach. Peter Pratt, where can people listen to your podcast?
It's Locked On Marlins, and on Twitter at Miami Marlins _UK. I am verified, but I had to pay $8. I paid the money.
Why?
So
I paid $9. I'm extra verified. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Hey, David Samuel Blaine, I see you in the chat. Couldn't get to you. I'll get you in the next show. This has been Locked On MLB for the 10th day of November, 2022. Talking to Peter Pratt across the bay, across the continent and the ocean. I got a class to teach. You can call me Teacher Sully.